So, let's talk about the new trend in Nigerian governance. Remote control leadership, brought to you not by Zoom or Microsoft Teams, but by silence, absence, and a stunning detachment from human suffering. In the last few weeks, communities in Benue, Plateau, and Borno have been plunged back into chaos, killings and attacks, displacements as well. The blood hasn't even dried before the next village is hit. And while Nigerians bury their dead, again, our commander-in-chief is, well, busy not commanding. But don't worry, according to presidential aide Bayo Nanuga, the president is ruling Nigeria remotely. Yes, you heard right, remotely. Apparently, the Wi-Fi is stronger in London and Paris than in Bassa, local government area. Now, let's rewind the tape. As always, I like to work down his history. Remember 2014, when Goodluck Jonathan was president and the opposition, now the ruling APC, could barely finish a sentence without the word insecurity in it. They tweeted, they marched, they gave press conferences, they weaponized tragedy, and they chanted, "Bring back our girls," with media-ready righteousness. Today, the same actors who carried placards then now carry passports. The same voices that demanded presidential presence at the scene of every tragedy have gone radio silent. Unless, of course, it's time to swear allegiance to the commander in absence. On your mandate, we shall stand. So, where is the outrage now? Where is the empathy? Where is the president? Benue is bleeding. Plateau is mourning. Borno is under siege once again. Yet the presidency is acting like this is a minor glitch in the system. They have left the heavy lifting to state governors, men who are doing the equivalent of using mosquito nets to stop missile attacks. But let's call it what it is: selective empathy, weaponized morality, and double standards dipped in hypocrisy. Now, back then, insecurity was proof of incompetence. Today, it's an inheritance, a work in progress, or worse, none of your business. But I'm going to tell you what the truth is. The truth is, no amount of image laundering or international travel can hide the fact that this administration is absent at a time as these. This isn't just bad optics, it's bad leadership, because while the president may be ruling remotely, the bullets are not remote. The corpses are not remote. The mass graves are not remote. And let's not forget, you campaigned on the promises of restoring security, of being a decisive leader, of ending the bloodshed. So why, Mr. President, do you now govern like a ghost, appearing only for flag offs, photo ops, foreign summits, emergency rules, but not for funerals? This is not governance. This is abandonment. You cannot outsource empathy. You cannot subcontract leadership like the emergency room. And you certainly cannot remote control a nation on fire. I just wanted to put it out there, sir. So, on your mandate, we stand. Because if you can't show up when Nigerians are dying, then when will you? Well, we are here to show up for you anyway. Isn't that right, Mazino?
Yes, indeed it is. And what a monologue you just delivered there. I was just thinking about security, stopping gunshots with mosquito nets. That was a very interesting one there.
I did
the
my
whole
best.
remote control thing. Yeah.
I did my best, Joe. Well, it was important. I should do the show remotely. Matter of fact, I'm doing the show remotely. Mazino.
I'll take care of the rest of the show for you. No wahala. It's all good. But I bet everybody's welcome to wake up. Hang on a second. Bet everybody's welcome to Breakfast Extra this morning. And of course, when you get here, let's talk a bit more about the insecurity issues here in Nigeria.
I know what you did there. I couldn't help myself. All right, we're getting started. This is Christina and Judith from Breakfast Extra.
Once again, good morning and welcome to your weekend breakfast show. Breakfast Extra, we'll bring you these stories shaping our country, especially this week, from the communities in crisis to corridors of power and the everyday people caught in between. I guess what we're talking about this morning. In northern Nigeria, traditional leaders are calling for a new approach to security, one that blends community vigilance and also digital innovation. We bring you the latest from Maiduguri, where calls are growing louder for local solutions to rising insecurity. And then in Plateau State, fresh attacks have taken Basa LGA. Governor Caleb Mutfwang visited grieving communities with a promise of stronger security measures. Well, we'll hear from our correspondent who was on ground. And tensions are also rising in Delta State over Inec's ward delineation in Warri. While some praise the commission, others warn of a potential crisis. We're joined by key voices from the Itsekiri community and Inec for an honest conversation on representation and also fairness. And still to come, as Nigeria works to boost childhood immunization, we ask, is it time to rethink our approach to vaccines and community outreach? We speak to experts in advocacy and also medicine about how to close the gap in child health. And finally, yes, the CBEX crypto platform has collapsed, leaving behind broken dreams, empty accounts, and big questions. Was it greed, ignorance, or just a failed investment? Well, we dig into the psychology and also policy gaps between this and that when it comes to Nigerians' greed and fast money. All that and more on today's edition of the show. So grab your coffee, tea, whatever beverage is your preference, because this is your weekend rundown. The stories that matter, the voices that count. And Judith, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Because only just last week, and this didn't escape our minds, well, it did.
It enough for me.
We clocked 1 year on your screens every single weekend, 104 shows for Breakfast Extra, not a single weekend missed out. Congratulations to you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to everybody who's behind the scenes putting this together.
Yeah.
Matthew, Maver, Nora, what's that other guy again called?
Collins.
The one that's on leave. Collins, yeah, you too. And everybody, the directors who also worked so hard to put it together. Thank you very much and congratulations to us.
Oh, yes, indeed. It's been 1 year of just bringing the biggest stories that matter, and it's been sublime, and also to the management as well, and for their full support as well. This dream has always been with them, and they picked us to make that dream come true out of a gazillion other people they considered, and we don't take it for granted. We do hope we made you proud. Okay, that's it.
Definitely. Everybody who joins us, especially the reporters, when we do our big reports, thank you very much. The Kirawas, us and the Zoos, who else? Onion Ways, help me out.
That's
Jamil.
Chiwe. By the way, Chiwe just clocked 50, by the way.
Congratulations to you, Chiwe.
Our reporters are scattered across Nigeria who joins us to bring us all the big reports from all around Nigeria, whether it's northeast, the southwest, or south-south. They do their best to bring it, as well as the eastern part of Nigeria, and also to the middle belt, Chizoba Anyowe, who's going to join us in due time. Also, Mari Karawa, who's also going to join us on the show as well. Yeah. But also here in Lagos, Bernard Akede to Balani Omoni, as well as Adeshara, but she's not with us now. She was the very first.
Our very first. Big
Adeshara was the very first big report with
invitee.
Invitee? Yeah.
Guest?
Yes.
Yeah, she watches it, not a guest. And then it is Easter. It is Easter.
Okay, and
take it away. It is Easter.
Oh yes, Easter. Sorry. I don't
know what happens during these celebrations. So
why?
It's new to me. That's why. So I don't know what the greetings are or anything.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Oh well, it's Happy Easter. It's a general now. It's Happy Easter now.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, but I don't think there's any Easter celebration today, but it's an Easter weekend, so you have the Good Friday. I thought you, anyway. It's a different type of celebration for you. Moving on. Let's get started with the big report, shall we?
Yes.
So we're going to go all the way to the north, right? The north is once again in the headlines for the wrong reasons. Insecurity, from banditry to kidnappings and insurgent attacks, and communities across northern Nigeria continue to bear the brunt of a crisis that seems to have defied numerous security interventions. But this time, traditional leaders are not speaking up, I beg your pardon, not just with concerns, but with concrete recommendations. At the 7th Executive Committee meeting with the Northern Traditional Rulers Council held in Maiduguri, the call was loud and clear. Institutionalize community-based security systems and embrace modern technology to tackle insecurity from the ground up. The Sultan of Sokoto, His Eminence Muhammadu Saeed Abubakar III, and the Shehu of Bornu, among others, have made impassioned appeals for localized tech-enabled approaches, signaling perhaps a shift from just top-down to bottom-up solutions. News Central's Umaru Kirawa was at the meeting and brings us the special report. Take a look.
From the seat of the Caliphate, Sokoto, to Zamfara and Katsina, stretching to Jos and Borno State, one major concern now in northern Nigeria is the killings across the length and breadth of the region. Traditional leaders of the northern region converge in Maiduguri to brainstorm, cross-fertilize ideas, and identify solutions.
If we want to resolve the problems in the north as leaders, we can do so. How? We sit together and discuss and take issues up one by one and say, this is what we are going to do. From the governors to the traditional institutions to the ulama to the common man on the street, what he should do to help the security agencies, the governorship, the political leadership, and us to bring to the BRS medium these killings.
The Nigerian governors will work with the National Assembly to ensure that the role of the traditional rulers is captured in the Nigerian Constitution. I want to assure you that Borno, under my leadership, will inshallah ensure the insurgency ends before I leave office.
The meeting teamed enhanced security for stability and development in the north, so traditional leaders discussed the role of traditional institutions in fostering peace, particularly amidst insurgency, banditry, and farmer-herder conflicts.
Traditional rulers from the level of Meawa, Argo, Dakachi, Hakimi, etc. must know your citizens. So KYC is know your citizens. That is my appeal to traditional rulers.
It is therefore essential that we continue to build on these successes while remaining vigilant against forces that threaten our collective peace.
All hands must be on deck to bring out solutions to these problems. And whenever we bring such solutions to the political leaders, let them know we're only helping them. We are not, we will never be in contention with the political leadership of the various governors and whatever.
The traditional leaders also called for a bill on the reinstatement of the roles of the traditional leaders to be enshrined in the Constitution of Nigeria, as well as bill of the National Council of Traditional Leaders of Nigeria also formed part of their deliberations. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
I want to say thank you to Umaru for such stellar reporting there from Maiduguri. Now, he joins us live from Maiduguri to shed more light on this developing story. Kira, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome on Breakfast Extra.
Yes, thank you. A very good morning to you and my sister.
Do I blame you? I don't blame you now.
You guys, keep your family problems out of here.
I know how to catch you. I don't blame you.
All right, Kirawa, so tell us, powerful calls from traditional rulers there. What stood out the most to you about the tone and urgency of the message at the council meetings?
Well, I think they are very much clear with regard to what really needs to be done in terms of really tackling the issue of the resurgence, not only the resurgence, but the issue of insurgency, the banditry, the kidnappings, and so on and so forth. First, I will start with the quotation by the famous Yusuf Maitama Sule, the Damasan in Kano of late memories. He said that any people that abandons their culture will lose their respect and their identity. And any people that try to emulate an alien culture will end up being a caricature of what they are trying to copy. They will be out of sorts everywhere, at home, nowhere. The point is, in the Nigerian system, looking at how things have been going, even pre-independence, independence, and the security situation now, it seems that the traditional institutions who have been the custodians of our tradition, the custodian of our culture, the custodian of the rich values that we have, the African values, have been sidelined along the line, which really metamorphose into serious security threats. Because then the traditional leaders know whoever that is coming to a community and whatever he's coming to do to that community, and so on and so forth. But along the line, the traditional institutions are just there. They are supported. Sometimes they are, I would say, sorry to use this word, spoon-fed. Sometimes they are not given that constitutional mandate of, they are not supported financially, and so on and so forth. And this has really led us to where we are, because we abandoned our culture, we abandoned our costume, the rich values that we have, the issues of tackling security from the traditional point of view, and so on and so forth. And
Umaru,
Umaru, I think it's one of the major
just a second, Umaru.
things in which
just a second,
Umaru. Meeting of the northern leaders really pointed out to.
Okay then, Umaru, I didn't want you to go too far. Can you please explain exactly or define what these traditional means of security is? Let's get an idea of what that apparatus is as against what it is coming from the top to bottom, since they're speaking of security from bottom up now. What are those traditional means?
Yes, you know, like I've started saying it, the traditional institutions are the custodians of the culture, the tradition, the norms, the values. Sometimes they shape the behavior of how the society really works. And they advise if there is any problem within the community, the Bulama will invite the person, the person that is having maybe an alien behavior in which to correct and to advise, and then where necessary, certain measures will be taken to address. We have the Kanim Borno Empire, which has been there for over 1,000 years. The Oyo Empire is there. And different traditional system of governance in Nigeria, even before the amalgamation of Nigeria in 1914. As such, that African culture of addressing the root causes of the security problems have slightly deviated. And as such, there is the need to bring these people on board, give them all the necessary powers, because they know the community better than any person in the society, the traditional institution. They are more closer to the people, they are hard off, and they are impactful in the community in terms of what they say and how people see it. And as such, there is the need to empower them, give them morals, and of course, if need be it, give them the roles. This issue of madness of yesteryears in Plateau, in Borno, in Benue, and other parts of the country will become history.
All right. One being informed that we're joined by the chairman, Borno State Civil Service Commission. He's the secretary and spokesperson for the Borno Elders Forum, and that's Dr. Bulama Mali Gubio. Dr. Gubio, many thanks for joining us. We appreciate you for coming on. I would like to also just start with just ask you, right? Given the concerted calls by the leaders as well as the Royal Highnesses, the Royal Fathers, talk to me about the security situations and the need for this urgent call for concerted efforts in treating security for those communities.
Thank you very much. The security situation in the country is becoming worrisome, and that prompted the traditional fathers across the north to converge in Maiduguri to discuss the issues. Actually, security of the land used to be the responsibility of the traditional authority and the police. The Nigerian police always collaborated and worked very closely with the traditional institutions. Right from the bottom, the Moruma, the Bulama, the Lawan, the Ajia, up to the level of the Shehu. And in between, we have so many traditional titles in charge of security of the land. Every Moruma, every Bulama knows who and who comes in and goes out from their community. You will never enter any community without being noticed by the traditional authorities. They will ask you, they will investigate you before you settle down. If you are to be given accommodation, that accommodation should also be confirmed by the traditional authority there, whether it is the Muruma, the Bulama, or the Lawan, before you get the accommodation. But since 1976, when local governments were created, the power of the traditional authorities were completely taken away and given to local government authorities. And the local government system was based on political inclinations. And local politicians cared only about getting power through the ballot box. So they never wanted to offend anybody. Even if there are criminals, they would overlook sometimes they overlook them. And then the Bulama, the Moruma, the Lawan, the district, all of them had no power of arrest, no power of questioning. Then the idea of freedom of association, freedom of movement in Nigeria is also there. Everybody has the right to go anywhere he wants to go at any time, settle anywhere, anytime he wants. And that also empowers criminals to access societies, communities without being checked, because the Constitution of Nigeria allows them free movement, freedom of movement, freedom of speech, freedom of association, settling anywhere they want. And that rendered the traditional authorities powerless, helpless. Then the issue of now insecurity is coming back. For the last 16 years, the Boko Haram insurgency had died down. The governor of Borno State had started moving all the IDPs back to their ancestral homes. More than 80%, 90% of them have been settled down in their ancestral homes. Even those of them who ran to other countries like Cameroon, Chad, Niger, were being brought back to their ancestral homes and resettled, hoping that the insurgency had ended. And then suddenly we discovered that the insurgency is coming back in full force. Right now, communities are being attacked almost on a daily basis. And those who were brought back from the neighboring countries are now in a disarray. And that was what informed, in the first place, the governor of Borno State convening a Security Council meeting where he voiced out his worries about the resurgence of the dreaded Boko Haram. Right. Then the traditional rulers now felt that it is their onerous responsibility as fathers of the nation. They are the leaders of the people. They are the custodians of the culture, tradition, religion, everything of the people. When the politicians want to get to the people, they go through the traditional rulers. The people access their traditional rulers much more easier than accessing political actors. Sometimes when you elect somebody, you can't even see him. Most of them live in the national headquarters, and unless when they come back home, even when they come back home, it is not for everyone to access them. But the Bulama is always there, Lawan is always there, the district head is always there, the chief is always there. And the commoners of the common will access each one of them at any point in time and provide credible information. The powers of the traditional rulers cannot be taken for granted because they know all the movements of the people through their people. The people will come to them, report to them, we have seen this, we have seen that. And then the most important thing now is for the leaders of the traditional authorities to reach out to the security operatives, usually the police. But now the military command is regimented, And the power is centralized. The traditional ruler cannot give information to a military formation fighting Boko Haram because they have no right to do so. Even if they do, the formation will have to take orders from above, and that takes time. Boko Haram is now hijacked by criminals. Actually, the original Boko Haram, which started in 2001 and culminated to violence in 2009, has actually died down. But as every criminal issue, that Boko Haram status has been hijacked by so many criminals. And any crime committed in the land now is Boko Haram.
All right. I wish we had. Yes, sir. I wish we had enough time to go in details, giving the history that you're giving about Boko Haram, but this is where we have to draw the curtains for this discussion. But we want to say thank you to you, sir, Dr. Bulama Mali Gubiyo. He's the chairman, Borno State Civil Service Commission, secretary and spokesperson, Borno Elders Forum. And also here with us was Umaru Kirawa, our correspondent who brought us this report. But that's all we can take. We want to say thank you, gentlemen, for taking out the time to join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let's go on a short break, shall we? When we return, we continue with insecurity, but this time our report from our correspondent, Chinwe Ogeli, Chizoba Aniwe, forgive me,
it's okay.
Over from Plateau, Jos. After the break, stay with us.
Another grim chapter was written in the history of insecurity in Plateau State. Two communities, Rike and Kimakwa in Basa local government area, were thrown into mourning following a midnight attack that claimed lives and destroyed properties. Now, as families grieve and survivors try to make sense of the loss, the governor of Plateau State, Caleb Mufwang, has visited the affected communities. During his condolence visit to the traditional ruler of the Irigwe chiefdom and residents of the area, he assured them of his government's commitment to strengthening security and also preventing a recurrence. But will words translate to action in the region that has seen so many promises and too little change? Well, News Central's Chizoba Aniwe was in Basa, and she gave us this report during the week.
This is Hurti, one of the affected communities in Bokos local government area, where many lives were lost and left unquantified property destroyed. Governor Caleb Mutfwang is here to feel their pain and reassure them of his commitment to making their lives better, especially in the areas of road construction and telecommunications networks, which are said to be the major constraints for swift security response.
No matter how many security men we bring here, they can only help us. We ourselves must rise to the occasion and do the needful. Government will stand with you. We have seen the terrain. We're going to go back and discuss how to improve the road network in this location. We're also going to see how to improve the telecommunication presence in this location and make sure that by the grace of God, we make life better for you and so that you can continue to thrive.
Despite their present predicament, Governor Mutfwang challenged them to be undaunted.
This attack is to keep you in poverty. This attack is to enslave your minds, to become slaves in your own land. I want to urge the youth of this village to rise up to the occasion. The youth of any community are the strength of the community. And it is time for us to put aside our differences. It is time for us to unite and live as one people.
At the gravesite of the victims, prayers were said for the repose of their souls, while the governor promised to immortalize them. Over 2,000 people now take refuge in 4 different internally displaced people's camps in Bokos.
Most especially the houses that we are born. We want the government to help us and rebuild the houses for us. And this is rainy season. And we want to go back to our farm, because this is our source of living in the community.
We need to the government to ensure that we are safe. And also, our roads are not good. That's the main point where they got to us and they killed so many people.
My house is, they're burned all. I need government to help us.
Now, with the visit of the governor here in Houthi, one of the communities affected during the last incidents in Bokos, with the assurances he has given, one would believe that everything possible will be done to ensure that relative peace once again returns here. From Bokos local government area of Plateau State for News Central, Chizoba and Nyoe.
And that was Chizoba Nyoe for that detailed report. Many thanks to her for that detailed report. And now we're going to be joined by a special guest. Just give me a second to pull up the name of our guest here who joins us live all the way from Plateau State. He joins us, and that is, he is the former executive director of Clean. And that's Mr. Peter. Mr. Peter, many thanks for joining us. We appreciate you for coming on.
Thank you, and my pleasure joining you on this great conversation this morning.
Thank you. A fresh cycle of insecurity and attacks, Bokos and now Bassa. What say you?
Well, if you know the history of Plateau and you go back to 2001, we've seen massive killing of women, children, and the aged in the last 20 years plus. And we've seen a gradual change in pattern and trends of this killing across the state. Initially, it was more in Jos South, Barrick and Ladi Riom. It moved to the southern part of Plateau, came back to the central part of Plateau, Bokos, Mongu, and then now Bassa again. And so this troublesome situation, a situation that we need to condemn in totality as a people. We've seen several government committees, white paper, and all this that has been put in place, but the killings have not stopped. We still have the president of STF that was brought in on board since 2000 or thereabout to mitigate and prevent this kind of killing, but it's still happening. And as the rainy seasons are approaching, we may likely see an increase in this kind of attacks and killing of community members, innocent children and women that have nothing to do with the conflict, that know nothing about the conflict. So I think to say the least, it's heartbreaking, it's disappointing, it's an issue that we don't need to keep discussing every time. And it's not even a Plateau issue alone. It's an issue that has engulfed the whole of the North Central. In Benue, there are several persons in IDP camp. If you move to Nasarawa in the past, we've had this issue. In Taraba, I mean, it's virtually every state in this country is suffering from one form of insecurity or other. But focusing on Plateau State, you know that Plateau State is home of peace and tourism. We cannot be talking about the tourism potential of Plateau. We cannot be talking about potato that Plateau is supplying like 60 to 70% across several parts of the country. And we cannot talk about yam and other products that come out of the state if we're talking about the incessant killing of women and children. And so I think government, particularly the federal government, need to do more. As we all know, state governors do not have control over security apparatus. I think there's no state governor that even have control over Boy Scouts in the state. And so you cannot control the military, you cannot control the police. And so all they are left is to make promises that without that backing of the federal institution, it's difficult for them to implement. So I think it's an issue that we need to go back to the drawing board and look at the security architecture of this country and ask ourselves, are certain citizens more important than others? Why do we encourage these killings by our slow response? Now, the slow response I'm talking about here is the fact that we seem to be struggling to even prosecute people that have been arrested over the years. We seem to be struggling to even identify the perpetrators of this crisis. We've given them several names, unknown government, marauders, I mean, all manners of names. Nobody is addressing the real issues of who are the perpetrators of this crisis. And until we address the root cause of this crisis, we'll continue to be running around without identifying real solution to it. And even if it's just one life that is gone, it's an issue, much more of losing 50. I mean, it's only in Nigeria that we count this figure and still people go to sleep and feel that it's normal. And I think we've lost our sanity. We need to have a value reorientation. We need to ask ourselves, where did you miss it? And go back and trace it and get it right again.
Okay. Mr. Peter, I like the fact that you're actually talking about these very nuanced issues when it comes to security in Plateau State and the recurrence of all of these. Now, from last week, we saw a situation where the army and the police actually were clueless about what exactly is causing the insecurity there. Now, we also saw the governor give very strong promises. One has to wonder whether these promises are to be taken maybe with a pinch of salt, seeing that there is no idea exactly as to what's causing these attacks in Plateau State. So what is it like? Are the people actually convinced that these promises might hold water or otherwise?
Well, I think we must give the governor the benefit of doubt. He has shown commitment to peace on the plateau. He has reached out to various communities. He has opened up more space for inclusiveness in governance. He has created avenue for people to share their grievances and all of this. And so the only way we can achieve that is to give the
We seem to be having some connection challenges there with Mr. Gad Shamaki. Hoping that we can reconnect with him. He had earlier told that he might be having some problems with the connection since the network where he is a bit iffy. We hope that he comes back so that we can talk about the issues there in Plateau State. But he was on the verge of telling about the... Okay, I hear we have Mr. Peter back. Mr. Gad Shamaki Peter, please, are you back with us?
Yes, I'm back.
Yes, we can hear you now. Please do continue.
Yeah, so I was saying that we need to give back and ensure that we support the government of the day in every way possible, because the government has shown the political will, and I'm sure Mr. President have made strong statements, and we need to give back and ensure that we're talking to the community. People must forgive each other. Security agencies must be firm and fair. They must provide security. I'm aware that it's not possible to provide security for every community and individual. But where's the place of intelligence gathering and collaboration and networking and sharing? Where's the place of community initiative to provide security for themselves in recognition and in partnership with conventional security? So I think we need to give the governor more support to be able to do more. Because again, the governor is closer to the people, just like we have local government chairman and councillor. The federal government is a bit far from the people at times. So I think the governor have made a strong statement. We need to back him up. We need to support him to ensure that this statement and promises made are fulfilled and we don't lose any other life again. Because you know that life is not what we can replicate once it's gone.
From what you said, we
need to give him the benefit of doubt.
From what you said, you actually just made one very little but interesting statement there. You said people need to forgive each other. Is this pointing to a factor, perhaps maybe the main issue is a cultural issue or conflict between the two, between cultures of any sort? Do we have intel as to exactly what's causing these attacks?
Well, it's men's population. At times it's difficult to hold on because people bring a bit of religion, a bit of politics, a bit of ethnicity, but above all is the criminality. That people have found it a lucrative business. It has become an industry. There are people that are benefiting from this crisis. And until we're able to identify such individuals, those shadow figures that we don't always see, those people that are in the background igniting and supporting this killing, we may not be able to resolve the issue. So it's beyond what we call armchair research or information that you just say this is it. Because the pattern has changed over the years, the approach has changed over the years, the attack and the intensity have increased over the years. So we need to do a comprehensive analysis and in-depth intellectual discussion and empirical fact need to be brought to bear for us to be able to say this is what the problem is. And once you don't understand an issue, you cannot provide solution to it. And the Plateau crisis is an age-long crisis since 2020. Since 2001 till date. We're talking about 20-something years of the crisis. So we need to be tired. And when we talk about forgiveness, is the fact that we as citizens need to forgive ourselves. We need to identify that common enemy that has been creating this problem. And my argument constantly is the fact that the entire people creating this problem, they are less than 0.1% of our population. But the difference between them and us is their their intentional approach to the issue, their dedication to their evil act, and they are very committed to it. While good people, we do kill, we go back, we're tired, we are not committed. So we need to get to that level where we take on this conversation home, we discuss with every stakeholder, we bring everybody on board, and genuinely want to address this issue. That's the only way we can get out of this crisis.
Mr. Peter, You're saying
Yes.
dialogue would take us out. That's the only genuine way that will take us out of this crisis. But you also made reference saying that the chaos and the reprisal, or rather the re-emergence of these killings and these attacks in Plateau, years in the making, has now metamorphosed from what was an ethnic cleansing to now an industrialized terrorism. So it begs to ask the question about a preferred solution, a targeted solution to this problem. What then could it be if these attacks have metamorphosed from ethnical and religious attacks to now being industrialized terrorism? Mr. Peter, did you get what I said?
I think he might be frozen there.
Did you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Did you get my question?
Miss your question, please. The network went funny.
Okay. Earlier on during your submission, you said that the attacks in the Plateau had metamorphosed over the years from ethnical and religious attacks to now industrialized terrorism, and that you said dialogue is key, where all stakeholders come together to dialogue. And then I'm asking, is dialogue enough? Because we've been doing this for over the years in the making, over a decade. What would be a targeted preferred solution to the issue now that the problem has metamorphosed and just ethnical cleansing to industrialized terrorism, as you've noted?
Well, basically, we must have the political will to do that which is right. Government primary responsibility is the protection of life and property, and government need to be firm, government need to be fair. And over the years, we've seen that criminals that have been arrested were taken out of town, and nobody gets to hear the conclusion of the matter. And so we must use a couple of persons as example to say that, look, we have zero tolerance for people that invade and kill innocent farmers, innocent rural dwellers, and people that make life miserable for other Nigerians. And when we are able to do that, we'll be able to address this issue. And we must look at this issue beyond just Plateau State. We must look at it as a national problem. When this issue started several years ago, if the previous government have addressed this issue, especially at the federal level holistically, probably this issue wouldn't have gone the way it's going at the moment. So our response must be holistic. We must come with everything we have to address this issue, because it's becoming a norm, it's becoming the usual, and we should not allow killings to become a usual in our community, especially when such communities are farming community that are feeding the nation, supporting the economic growth of the nation. So I think the federal government need to do more in terms of supporting the strong presence of military, giving them enough equipment, supporting the manpower, encouraging the military to have the ability to want to carry out their work. Interagency collaboration is very important. But talking about what communities need to do is the fact that the killers travel from one community to another to their destination. So what are those communities that open their doors doing, and how can they prevent such movement? So we must look at this issue beyond just one particular location to say that, look, we are all Nigerians. We need to protect each other. We need to be each other's brother and sisters keeper. We need to give timely information to security agencies, and security agencies must respond promptly when they have this information. These are some of the steps we need to take. And government needs to pay compensation to people that have lost their properties or people that have been victims of this crisis one way or the other.
A multifaceted issue. We're talking about timely response or timely intel. But when the attacks are at midnight at a place where there are inaccessible roads and network, mobile network, it begs to ask the question how those people are going to get, rescued or saved in time. There's a lot there's that plays here at the fore, but I wish we had enough time to go into this. But Mr. Peter, I must say thank you. Gashimaki Peter, he's a former executive director of Clean Foundation. He's given us a bit of insight following the visit of Governor Caleb Mofwang to Bassa community after the killings that happened at midnight in 2 of the communities in Bassa. Once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go on a short break, shall we? When we return, Efe Israel, I like to call him Efe Cop. He joins us to talk about the multi-car accident that happened on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. After the break, stay with us.
Welcome back. Now, just before we go go out for the news. Something happened yesterday. If you were on the streets of Lagos trying to leave Lagos through the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway,
like me every day,
you'd have been trapped for a very long time. Now, this was because there was an accident that involved an articulated vehicle and multiple cars, and also some loss of life. Our correspondent here at News Central, Ifitobore Israel, actually went out to the scene and brought us back this package.
Lagos Road, Ibadan Expressway, Friday, Good Friday. We are just coming. We don't know whether they are there, whether they, what really happened. I know that is that I just hear the sound of hitting at my back. Finish the vehicle. Take me like this. So the rest, that's all.
The crash occurred around past 7 a.m. on Friday morning. A total of 7 vehicles were involved in the serious crash, including 6 Toyota vehicles and a grain Mack truck. According to the Federal Road Safety Commission, preliminary investigations indicate that probable causes of the crash were speed violation. 5 individuals sustained various degrees of injury, 1 adult male, 2 adult females, and 2 female children. The Lagos State Traffic Management Authority, LASMA, also confirmed the incident via the official X accounts. A commuter shares his harrowing experience.
I thank God there are some people, they are help us open because the driver's side cannot open. I have to force to the other side. They opened it out from that place. Then people have been saying, Baba, thank God, oh, thank God. I say, well, thank God. I don't see anybody die, though. It can be happening, but I only saw, they said it's this trailer driver or whatever. I don't know, they put somebody on the road by the side like this. That's all. I don't know whether he died though or not though. I don't know. What I see is what I see. If I don't see anything, I cannot see it.
The ripple effect of the accident extended as far back as Otedola Bridge, leaving thousands stranded for hours in the early morning rush. The Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is a major artery connecting Nigeria's commercial capital to other parts of the country. With recurrent accidents on the stretch, commuters are calling for increased safety measures and stricter regulation of heavy-duty vehicles. The wreckage from the accident was eventually taken off the road to the relief of motorists. Though it's Good Friday, Lagosians are thankful that the incident did not claim lives. In Lagos, for News Central, Israel Ifirobo.
That's the report from Ifirobo, Israel. Now, after the news, we'll be bringing him into the studio. We'll be asking specific questions about the report or what might not have made it into the report, especially the reports about whether there's a death or not. But you'll find that out when we get back. Well, let's get ready for the news. Welcome back. It's time for Breakfast Headlines here on Breakfast Extra. My name is Mazino Appeal. Now, let's begin in West Africa, where President Bola Tinubu has issued a firm directive to Nigeria's armed forces and security agencies, demanding an immediate and decisive end to insecurity across the country. In his Easter message to Nigerians, the president said the tide is beginning to turn against those fueling violence, attributing his progress to the unwavering courage and commitment of the nation's security personnel. His directive comes amid a surge in violent attacks and the tragic loss of lives in several parts of the country. The president expressed heartfelt sympathy for those affected and acknowledged the pain and fear being endured by many communities. And in the meantime, the presidency has strongly refuted claims that Vice President Kashim Shettima was denied access to the presidential villa, labeling the report as false, mischievous, and entirely fabricated. In a statement issued by Stanley Nwokocha, Senior Special Assistant to the President, Media and Communications, the allegations circulated by obscure blogs were described as part of a coordinated attempt to create division within the presidency. Nwokocha stressed that there is no rift between President Bola Tinubu and the Vice President, who remains fully focused on his duties and steadfast in his report for the President's shared vision. Now, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has given a damning verdict of the preparation of the People's Democratic Party ahead of the 2027 general elections. The minister, while replying to a question from News Central Television's Abuja Bureau Chief Amadin Uyi during the State of the Nation media chat in Abuja, says that the current crisis within the PDP has set the party in a backward trajectory, making it unprepared for the next general elections expected to wrestle power from President Bola Tinubu. And the General Officer commanding 3 Armored Division, Major General Folusho Oyinlola, has called for concerted efforts towards a lasting peace in Plateau State. The GOC, who doubles as the Commander Operation Safe Haven, gave the admonition during an extensive stakeholders engagement in the wake of recent killings in some parts of the state. Correspondent Chizoba Anyonwe was also there for News Central. I will bring you that report subsequently. Now, it was also a nightmare for thousands of commuters and motorists on Friday as a multiple vehicle accident caused a massive gridlock on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway near Kara Bridge in Ward Opik. News Central's Ifirobo Israel was on the scene, and we brought you that report from earlier.
Good Friday. We are just coming. We don't know whether they are there, whether they, what really happened. I know that is that I just hear the sound of hitting at my back. Finish the vehicle.
If you stay tuned to Breakfast Extra, we'll be bringing Ifirobo in and having extensive conversation with him on the instance. So stay tuned. Now, out of Nigeria, in East Africa, at least 35 civilians were killed and 40 others wounded after the Rapid Response Forces shelled residential neighborhoods in the city of El Farsa, North Darfur. This is according to an announcement by the Sudanese Army. In a statement, the Army's 6th Infantry Division stationed in El Fasher said the RSF launched indiscriminate and scattered artillery shellings on Thursday, targeting populated areas across the city. The bombardment, according to the military, killed 35 people, including women and children and the elderly, and left 40 more with severe injuries. Now, that's all for the breakfast headlines. Do stay tuned, because coming up once more, another big report here inside of Breakfast Extra. Stay tuned.
You're still watching Breakfast Extra here on News Central Television. I am Judith Atibi. It's time for us to come back to that discussion on big reports following the Kara Bridge auto crash, the multi-car accidents that happened on the bridge. We brought you that report from Ifirobo Israel, and he joins us live here in our studio. Our correspondent, Ifirobo Israel, also known as Ifirobo Cop. There we go.
Good to have you here.
Good to have you.
Breakfast Extra.
By the way, guys, it's my debut on the show.
Yeah, exciting times.
Good to
Thank you. Just go right in time.
It's the 105th show, so make sure you mark that. 105th. Yeah. That's nice. Well, it was rather grim yesterday. I was on my way to the island, however, it was rather to the mainland, but it was really tough getting here. All the way from Alakbare, in my case, there was traffic. I was only able to meander through because I was on a linear automobile. But it still took me a long time to get here. And to now find out that the issue was from the Kara Bridge, not too far. In fact, I don't think you've gone outside of Lagos, but just at the start of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. So you were there, and we saw the pictures and visuals, and some were rather very disturbing. So take us through exactly what had happened and what didn't make it into the report.
But it's good to be here, and it's just an opportunity to really, talk about what we saw yesterday and what really happened. But first of all, I'd like to say kudos to the men of the FRSC and the last officials the security operatives, they were prompt, they were really on time to ensure that it wasn't much more than we experienced yesterday. So back to what you asked. Yesterday, so it happened about past 7 in the morning. This multiple crash on Car Bridge, and a lot of factors could have been attributed to this. But the first scenario was after the crash. Because it's Good Friday, there were lots of people trying to get outside of Lagos. It's the Easter weekend for Christians, and Christians and non-Christians, they will try to use that time to go see their loved ones and just get some time off work. But it turned out gloomy, turned out horrendous. It was just horrific. The accident was indeed terrible. Like
how many cars were involved? I know there's a trailer. Was it a tanker or what they call them, the containers?
So it was a heavy duty truck carrying a container. A heavy duty truck carrying a container. And well, from what we saw and from what we could gather at the scene, it was the probable cause, according to the FRC, was speed violation. But a roadside mechanic, when he saw what happened and walked close to the articulated vehicle, and he said to me, Mr. New Central, this vehicle has no brakes.
None at all.
He said no brakes, that there was no brakes on that vehicle, because he could see it was turned over. So he could see that, there are no brakes there. So aside the fact that probable causes could have been speed violation, the fact that maybe the driver wasn't maintaining the speed limit and going too fast, and all the factors put together, there could have been no brakes on that particular vehicle. And that was what resulted into the multiple crash that we experienced on that day. So it was wild, it was horrific, and but the good part is no life was lost. I know a lot of people will be asking the question, but we saw the videos, we saw pictures.
There was an individual on the asphalt, even hours after the accident.
Yes.
I remained there for a while.
Yes.
I think I spoke to you personally about
it. Yeah, we saw that video. At the time we got there, the FRS officials, the Federal Road Safety Corps, the last officials, security agencies, they were prompt. Like I said, it happened about past 7 in the morning, and in the space of 2 hours, they've already taken all the wreckage. There was about 7 cars involved. 7 cars? Yes, so not 5 as initially reported. 7 cars were involved in this horrific multiple crash, and they took all the victims to the nearest hospital at OPIC. Yeah, so that was to them too. Yes, about that body you saw on the floor. Well, the man I spoke to said, well, no one died. He said, no, I can't say if anybody died.
Saw that in the
yes,
report.
he said he couldn't say if anybody died. And none of the officials there could confirm at that point in time if anyone actually, did die. And
well, it's not on the spot.
Not on the spot. Like we were talking pre-show, sometimes when things like this happen, the first thing is to rescue them. For the man you saw on the floor, sometimes people are scared to move the body, so you're not sure what to do. But the questions that I asked, I was told that the man you saw on the floor from the videos was still breathing at that time, so he wasn't confirmed dead at the time that we got there. So probably maybe something happened much later, but from at that spot, he was still breathing, and it was confirmed by eyewitnesses there as well that that man was still breathing. But it was just a horrible crash. And but kudos to the men of the FRC, the last month officials, the police authorities as well. They were on ground to manage the situation, and I think it was prompt. Although some may say it took quite a while, because the resultant traffic, the resultant effect from that crash, like you said,
all the way to Alakbere.
All the way to
Agedingbi as well. Was Judith? Were you in it as well?
I don't. I'm just learning. I'm so clueless. I didn't get into any of that traffic. So enjoying myself at home.
There's plenty of questions to be asked when it comes to articulated vehicles in Lagos, especially that pathway. I think you don't. You live in one of the pathways. I think you see the trucks all the time.
I don't.
Regarding the brake failure cases, we've had these issues multiple times, whether it's your Joelegba Bridge, whether it's Apapa, or some of these trucks actually, and maybe we should actually ask Mrs. Asualo, who's our maritime correspondent and has to deal with these truckers all the time. most of these articulated vehicles may have brakes in front for the trucks themselves, but the trailers are exempted. They don't have these brakes attached to them, maybe for a reason of, now here they go type thing. What do you have to say to that?
So there's a bit of negligence when it comes to all of that as well. But this is where the law enforcement agencies, the VIO officials, this is what they're paid to do. This is what this is why they are on the roads, to check these vehicles. It's okay to have them on the road, but we do know that there are stipulated times where they are meant to plan the roads. If you watch that report,
say that again for those at the back, because whenever I'm coming to the office, when I see these guys, and it's so annoying because during the weekday we happen to be in the afternoon, right? Yeah. And so between the hours of 1 or 12, mostly 1. Yeah. Late afternoon traffic is tight. You see these people on the road. Yeah. It's like, what are you doing? And maintain one. Oh my God! Like, I don't want to. So I was keeping quiet. I want to get into this discussion.
Speaking about
why are you driving daytime?
Speaking about maintaining your lane, pre-show, I was just having a talk with one of the officials, someone who is into safety. And was asking a question: why don't we have dedicated lanes for these articulated vehicles? That particular road, Kara Bridge, coming out of Lagos into Ogun State, that the road can be expanded. It can be expanded. That will it will take a whole lot of work to be done, but it is something that needs to be done if the government deem it fit to do it, and then protect lives as well and prevent such accidents on Kara Bridge and elsewhere. You can expand this road, have dedicated lanes for articulated vehicles like this, so that it can reduce, the threat of having accidents on the road as well.
Or take them out completely. I was pleased to see containers on the railway the other day. I was trying to get through the...
they've always been on the railway.
So I'm wondering why that is not the biggest option.
So the reason why is that those trailers, no, it's not made very relaxed. So the reason why is that most of those trailers, they're either construction to go build, or they are being shipped out with the parts that are going to, or the destinations that are going to already have like train tracks. If they don't have train tracks, they can't use them. That's why.
It's about solutions, really. Yes, it's about solutions. You spoke about the rail tracks. It works. So is this something that we can encourage, these people to get into, to start moving goods much more with the tracks and with the trains? It is something that can be enforced, so we can reduce the frequency of such accidents on our roads. It's pretty bad. Thank God that from what we got, no life was lost, but indeed, the frequency of such accidents on our roads is just too much.
The impatience of us as well plays a very big factor.
Well, Israel, thank you very much for coming through. Thank you for making a debut on Breakfast Extra. We look forward to more and more of your reports. Absolutely. We love them. And do stay tuned for more of those.
You're welcome back. It's time for our very first big story for today, and this time it's word delineation, the quiet but critical backbone of electoral representation, and is now stirring major waves in Delta State. In Warri Federal Constituency, a growing number of Itsekiri leaders and youth groups are raising red flags over what they describe as historical marginalization in ward allocation. Their argument: despite being one of the founding ethnic nationalities in Delta State, the Itsekiri people are underrepresented, and this, they say, has led to years of political and developmental exclusion. And while the Independent Electoral Commission, Inec, recently concluded a new delineation exercise, which some groups like the Egbama youths have praised, others, particularly from the Itsekiri interest group, have rejected the move, calling it skewed and unacceptable.
Now, all eyes are on President Bola Tinubu as the Itsekiri leaders demand federal intervention to prevent what they want could become a regional crisis if left unresolved. Today on Big Story, we go beyond the headlines and into the heart of this conversation. We have with us here two gentlemen, Emiko Etuewe, leader council Warri South, Warri West, and also Bumemi Awala, chairman Itsekiri interest group. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the show. Good morning. Thank you very much for coming through.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Mr. Emiko, I'm going to ask first off, my first question to you is, let's get an idea of what the mechanism around this delineation is, and exactly why the groups are, well, some of them actually feel okay with it, but then mostly the Itsekiri interest groups aren't. So exactly what are the issues and what are the structures that were put in place by Inec? Oh, before you answer that, I would also like to tell that we did reach out to members of Inec and especially the Voters Education Program, but it was tough getting them through. Unfortunately, they couldn't get to be on the show for one reason or the other, but we did try. So, Mr. Emiko, please.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for coming on.
Firstly, let me correct an impression of the immediate past leader of the council.
Immediate past
immediate
leader.
Past from 2021 to March 2024.
All right.
Now to answer your question. I came here and deal with the guidelines provided by Mustafa Yinka on the 21st of March 2024, after the Supreme Court ordered for a fresh delineation in the Warri Federal Constituency. The guidelines are here. You did mention that some ethnic nationalities had praised Inec for what they had done. Now let me expose something to you there.
Go ahead.
Which, of course, I'd like Nigerians to also take notice and serious cognizance on. Inec said what they have done is a draft, and some people are praising them. Isn't that suggestive?
Of what?
You're praising Inec for the draft they have, the proposed draft that they have submitted to the ethnic nationalities. Why the Itsekiris? We have rejected the draft because it doesn't match reality.
So why exactly have the Itsekiri ethnic group
now
rejected?
Yes, I'm coming to that. I'm not going to bore people with a lot of details. I will speak to just these guidelines. I'll touch on one or two. You see, on the guideline, Inec said okay, I'm finding it difficult to get the actual parts, but it's on my head.
Okay, go ahead, please, go ahead.
Inec said no word should exist in more than one local government. As we speak, the draft contains a particular unit. 2 units were transferred. Or should I, I think, I beg your pardon. Inec said no word should exist and no units should exist in more than one local government. As we speak, 2 polling units were hijacked, transferred from Warri Southwest to add to some ghost units in Warri South.
What are these ghost units? Let's, so that we're clear on the details. What are these ghost units?
Very succinctly, because we don't have
Yes, the ghost units are in Warri South, local governments. We have in the draft, Ward 2, Bolowama Ward. Delta Boatyard. Okay, these are existing properties that belongs to the Itsekiris. So we wonder how it now reflects under the ward and then being apportioned to the Ijos in Warri South.
Okay.
Now, this is where I am going to talk about the ghost units. We have Peace Primary School. Units that do not have anybody, that's basically ghost unit, that do not have any constituents. For instance,
where is Peace Primary School exactly?
Peace Primary School, I think is alien to me.
So there's no such.
Then number 2, how do you create units in a marketplace when, of course, during the election, there will be nobody in the market.
So this marketplace unit you're talking about is where exactly?
It's around the main market area, Donuma. Okay. That's the actual, the historical name.
So, Mr. Emiko, I hope you understand why we're asking the details of these, so that we can get the facts out there regarding the severity of the situation.
Let me also make.
So we need the definitive.
Let me also make another one clear to you. Inec on the guidelines states that every polling unit must not exceed 50. Once it exceeds 50, you create another polling, you use to create another word. So which is every ward shouldn't contain more than 15 polling units.
Okay, 15.
All right.
50. But as we speak, in Warri Southwest, we have 2 wards that contains 60 polling units each, respectively.
Okay.
Do you know in this draft, they never transcend into anything, they never amounted to anything. They still remain as 1 wards each, even though they are over 50, precisely 60 wards each, 60 units each. But go to the Ijo area. We have, on the draft, a 25 unit ward was transfigured to have created, on the draft, they have created 4 wards.
So basically what you're saying is that these structures that are in place disenfranchise the Itsekiri people. Is that's what you're saying?
Beyond disenfranchisement, marginalization.
Marginalization. Judith, you were going to say?
I was going to ask you, Awala, I beg your pardon. You know, some are saying that this is a case of political undercurrents that is boiling over, and others have argued that it's a legitimate fight of equity, right? Giving his term saying that this is marginalization at its best. But how would you respond to critics that are saying that your objection to Inec and its sectioning is political posturing?
Well, the delineation is supposed to be to create a sort of expansion in the current wards and units to accommodate the growing population in a particular area. So the Warri Federal constituency has Itsekiris as the majority. Legally speaking, Itsekiris have a total of 20 wards out of 30 wards in Warri Federal constituency. Warri South has 10 legal wards, Warri North 10 legal wards, Warri Southwest 10 legal wards. In Warri South, we have 8 legal wards in control of the Itsekiris and 2 for the Urhobos. While in Warri Southwest and Warri North, we have 6 for the Itsekiris and 4 for the Ijos. Now, I believe for sake of fairness, if they are going to create wards and they make guidelines, I will start from the units, because units are smaller segments of the wards. When a unit has at least 750 registered voters, they now create a new unit. Then when a ward, just like my brother said, has gotten to 50 units, they create a ward. Now, when you now see Itsekiri is having units in some areas above 50, and Inec refused to create even 1 ward out of that unit. Meanwhile, they are creating multiple wards from wards that have less than even 30 units. The surprising thing is that they gave other guidelines that when creating a ward, the ward should not be close to a river or river body. It should not be close to a petrol station. It should not be close to a bank. It should not be close to a motor park. Let me surprise you what they did. In Warri South, they created 3 wards for the Ijos that were not even part of Warri South. And they brought wards from Southwest and other local governments to Warri South. And what they did, they gave them 3 new wards. Let me tell you what are the components of these 3 wards. We have a petrol station, mobile petrol station, along the road of these wards. We have the river, Warri River, behind these areas I'm talking about. We also have the
motor park at Besu Market Road. They added it to these wards. We have Eco Bank and Union Bank along this same distance. So everything Inec said should not be in any place that they are going to create a new unit.
Is what's playing out.
Is what is playing out for the 3 wards. So if they said 4 things should not be part of the new ward that's going to be created, and you now start seeing Inec creating units, about 20 units or 15 units, and in these areas, all the things they said should not be there are present.
So come elections, politically, what are the impacts of these ward creations that seem to marginalize, like Mr. Emiko has said?
Okay, the ward creation, you understand it in the sense that wards during elections, they consider the delegates from the wards. So first of all, primary elections are done with delegates. Each wards are represented by their delegates. So by the time you have your favorite candidates not able to pass the primary election, then it is sure that you cannot present anybody in the representation. So what they have done now is that they try to reduce the wards that come in favor of the Shekiris and increase the ones for the people that even are considered minority in these areas. So what they are trying to do is to reduce the majority and increase the minority.
Is there an ethnic undertone here?
Well, I would say yes, because Inec now puts the chairman of the committee as an interested party.
And where is he from?
Professor Rhoda Gumo, she's an Ijaw woman, to preside over a matter that involves Ijaw, Shekiri, and the Urhobos. Meanwhile, the other ethnic groups, especially the Shekiris, does not have somebody on the committee. The surprising thing is that this woman is a patriotic Ijaw woman. She is a member of the Ijaw Leaders of Thought. So when you bring somebody like that to oversee a matter like this, you don't even need to give her money. She will work for free for the interest of the job.
Was INEC consulted by all stakeholders when it comes to the Shekiri people? Was INEC consulted? Did INEC consult any stakeholders before creating that committee? Because of this oversight that you're mentioning, did INEC come to the stakeholders of the Shekiri people to consult them before that committee was created?
No. That committee the committee was actually the one that invited stakeholders to announce to stakeholders of the 3 ethnic nationalities that they are about to carry out the order of the Supreme Court judgment. So it was already enacted in INEC. The woman is the commissioner, so it was already enacted in INEC. So we weren't privy to that. That was the prerogative of the commission, INEC.
What would a recourse look like for the Shekiri people?
Well, I think fairness is important because, just like he said, prior to the inauguration of the committee, the Ijaws and the Urhobos were invited to INEC in Abuja headquarters. Twice, Shekiris were never invited.
Represented by whom? I like the names, the details. They were invited over, but represented by whom?
The Ijaw stakeholders, yes. The Urhobo stakeholders, the Ijaws that actually went to court for 6 years without even serving the Shekiris. We admitted that, well, they played the first one and everybody, and they got the judgment. But when you are going to invite stakeholders, I'm sure the majority stakeholder that has the highest number of registered voters should be present in the meeting. But when you bring the minorities, it's as if you are trying to undermine the positions of the majority just to favor the minority. So what they did, they invited 2 out of 3 ethnic nationalities and left the Shekiris out of it. And they didn't make it hidden. It was public. So as at the time the Shekiris came for their first meeting in Asaba, it was actually the 3rd meeting with INEC. Meanwhile, other ethnic groups have gone for 2 meetings already.
And I wish that we had, INEC here or a representative from INEC to come to, because, at this point, there's a lot of questions that they need to answer. But as we gear up for 2027, right, and as all the other parties and every other stakeholders nationwide are coming together, How soon is the timeline for this issue to be resolved for Inec?
I think that's question. I wish they were here.
I wish they were here.
You know,
exactly.
they would have been able to respond to that because the commission has their work frame. You know, our part have been played. We have rejected the draft. It doesn't match reality. It does not cognate with historical facts, and I just exposed their shortcomings in carrying out the delineation. You know, aligning with the guideline. You know, need I even announce to you that in this same draft, where they say, do not put polling units in the mosque or the church. We have one of the polling units in the mosque, in the shrine.
In what community?
Oporoza.
Oporoza. Okay.
In a shrine. So I think I think they have a lot to explain to Nigerians. Now, going by to answer your question, you know, like I said, they're in the right place to respond, but we have played our part. We have also drafted our measures and submitted to Inec. So we are waiting for Inec to respond accordingly.
When you said that a polling unit is located in a shrine, is this an issue of oversight or lack of details? You know, when it came to this allocation of polling units, where do you think the root problems came from?
They were in a hurry to perpetrate the fraud.
Let me come in. No, it's not according to him. Now, before INEC carries out delineation, they have some documents they work with, which is, for example, the voters register. The voters register will tell you how many voters are in a unit. I just said 750 will translate to creating a new unit. Yeah. So how do you create a unit that does not have any voter? Are they ghost voting? He said shrine. Let me tell you another one. There's a unit because there are coordinates on the GPS for every unit. There's a polling unit on the water. If you press your Google location for some of the locations they brought, some of the polling units are on water. And another thing why we are scared that INEC, they have something fishy going on. The Supreme Court judgment said for future election. So the delineation is supposed to be ahead of 2027.
Right.
And this delineation can be done in less than 6 months. Why the hurry now? Meanwhile, INEC has pending court judgments that have not implemented. For example, in Warri South, we have 10 wards, 8 for the Shekiris, 2 for the Urhobos. They went to put 12 illegal wards and made it 6 for Shekiris, 6 for the Urhobos, thereby reducing our representation in Warri South from 2 House of Assembly members to 1. This is what they did. Shekiris went to court and got judgment in both Federal High Court and Court of Appeal. For the past 22 years, INEC have refused to implement it. Even after signing an MOU with Shekiris in 2019, the judgment creditor who signed for the Shekiris by Saikomi, the Commissioner of Police Delta State for Peace to Reign, and INEC, they refused this document to be implemented. Now, there are House of Assembly members, 2 in the House of Assembly members representing illegal wards, and they are collecting salary for representing illegal wards in Warri South local government as we speak.
Mr. Awala, Mr. Tewewe, it's unfortunate that we don't have INEC here, and it's also unfortunate that we don't have so much time to continue discussing about this, because there's so much that seems that's very interesting in these cases.
Yeah.
We're going to make sure that we continue to follow the story, especially the fact that we ask that you give details regarding these places, and I'm very sure that our Delta correspondent, Austin Azu, will take on these details, these names, these locations, and do some investigation when it comes to that. I want to say thank you very much for coming through on Breakfast Extra, and we'll continue to follow the story.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We've got more coming your way. Do stay tuned. It's still Breakfast Extra. Welcome back. Another big story here for Breakfast Extra. In a country where preventable childhood diseases still claim thousands of lives every year, child immunization remains one of the most powerful tools for safeguarding Nigeria's future. But despite years of public health campaigns and international support, Nigeria still faces gaps in routine immunization, especially in hard-to-reach communities, conflict zones, and among nomadic populations. Vaccine hesitancy, supply chain disruptions, and systemic underfunding are further compounding these crises. Now, with global focus shifting toward equitable access, local solutions, and data-driven outreach, stakeholders are calling for a rethink in how Nigeria approaches child immunization, not just as a medical intervention, but as a social and developmental priority.
So, how do we shift from periodic campaigns to sustainable community-anchored immunization coverage? And what innovative strategies are on the horizon? Joining us now on The Big Story are two people deeply involved in this discussion. First is Dr. Itunu Dave Agbola. She's a policy and advocacy coordinator at Save the Children International, a leading voice in promoting child health survival. And also joining us virtually is Dr. Philip Njemanzi. He's the chairman of the International Institute of Advanced Research and Training, Chidicom Medical Center. He has years of experience in frontline medical research and vaccine advocacy. Gentlemen and lady, thank you both for joining us on the program today. Let me start with you, Dr. Dave Agbola. Let's start with the big picture. What is the current state of child immunization coverage in Nigeria, and what are the most urgent policy gaps that we are facing currently?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, and thank you for that question, because we are in a critical situation in Nigeria currently when it comes to immunization. Because the United Nations Children Funding, as UNICEF has reported, that presently Nigeria has over 2.2 million children who have never been vaccinated. For children who have never been immunized, we call them zero-dose children. And this is alarming because it is actually the highest on the continent in Africa. Yet you talked about policy gaps. We have three major challenges. The first one is inadequate fund allocation to immunization activities. In the year 2001, African leaders who belong to the African Union met in Abuja, and they came up with a document known as Abuja Declaration. That Abuja Declaration is a commitment that posits that all African nations should allocate 15% of the national health budget to the health sector. Unfortunately, we have not been committed to that in Nigeria. The federal government allocation to immunization is still far below 15%. To the health sector, it's far below 15%, and it affects immunization activities. Although it was the federal government that signed that commitment, the states and local governments are also encouraged to key into that to improve healthcare delivery services at the state and local government levels. Unfortunately, when the federal government has not been committed, it's difficult for the states and LGAs to follow suit, because the allocation to the health sector will determine the quality of healthcare services. Another issue is the bureaucratic hurdles in assessing and utilizing funds. It is one thing for funds to be allocated. It is another thing for those funds to be released, and something else for those funds to be effectively utilized as well. Another serious challenge we have is inadequate human resources. The National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives recently reported that in the last 5 years, over 75,000 nurses and midwives have left the shores of this country. And recently, our coordinating minister for Health and Social Welfare mentioned that over 16,000 doctors also left the country within the last 5 to 7 years. This has left a serious gap in our health sector. Inadequate human resources is a very serious issue, because the health workers on the ground are overstretched, they are stressed up. A lot of them are going through burnout, yet they are under pressure to deliver more.
Let's also not forget the fact that there are also other groups of people who are very hard to reach, people who are nomadic in their nature, or maybe just very hard to reach locations in Nigeria. I want to come to Dr. Njemanzi before we go on a break now and ask, first off, sir, what's your take/stance when it comes to child immunization in Nigeria currently? Let's start with that, sir.
Yes, on the whole, I want to also join you to emphasize the importance of vaccination. It has been a very good tool that we have implemented over the years to help disease prevention. Having said that, I must say that we have to look at vaccination and these methods of prevention as nothing alien to us. You know, almost all the tribes in Nigeria have this scarification tradition. And the scarification, they introduce proteins, herbs, and all that into that process. And this, to some level, provokes some immunization also. So it's not something very alien to our tradition in the real sense of it, even though this is not properly recognized. However, we have to own the health industry. Health is national security. In fact, if anybody wants to attack you, it doesn't need to attack Nigerian military barracks or police. What they need to attack is your health system, because once they attack the health system, you are finished. The whole society is gone. So we have to take a new look at health. It's not something that the WHO gives us, or UNICEF, or any other international foundation. In fact, we should even ban any input from all outside sources. It must be a Nigerian project. The health system, the vaccination program, the vaccines must be produced here. We must be able to give it, so that people will go on to this as something that belongs to them. It's not just something that is being advocated by one international agency or the other. So we really have to hold the system. That's how it was originally designed. And that's how we should pursue this, because we have now left it to a project that is initiated from outside. Then, of course, naturally, the authorities are now responding to the demands because they feel somebody else is going to do it. And this is very, very dangerous to the national security of the Federal Republic.
Dr. Njemanze, I like that you put that cultural nuance into the question there, because you talked about the fact that this is not an alien tradition. In fact, it is traditional. We do have these scarification processes, like you said. So how then can we focus on these traditional means to help the healthcare process when it comes to immunization? Put it in the hands of traditionalists, perhaps? I'm asking because that was a very interesting input. Because there's always been this question about our immunization process in Nigeria being too vertical or too disease-specific. So how can we adjust to try and include the traditional means which we have to try and, well, attend to the problems we have when it comes to people not being vaccinated or children not being vaccinated?
Yes, I think the issue here is that though scarification, as I've mentioned, is being done and it's part of our tradition, and we introduce proteins, in fact, to the extent that there is what we call variolation, which is when you take the scars of scabies and then you introduce it on the site, and then it causes a local wound and provides some protection for things like smallpox and all that. So we have that, but we have to put more research into it. Mind you that scarification, for example, is not disease specific. So we have to put some more research to this. We have to look at our tradition from a different perspective. These are thousands of years of knowledge archive, and we have to look at it from that perspective. Should we be successful in making vaccination specific using the traditional method, I tell you, it will be universally accepted in our site. We don't really have to start marketing a new approach to this. People will accept this because it is an age-old tested knowledge.
Dr. Njemanze.
But we have to put a lot of research. We have to do that ourselves.
Okay, Dr. Njemanze, we're going to take a break, and when we get back, we might be exploring that a bit more. We've also got some more questions for Dr. Itunu inside the studio here with us, but let's go on a short break. We'll be back to continue with this conversation.
Hey, welcome back. You're still watching Breakfast Extra here on News Central Television. Before the break, we're talking about child vaccination and rethinking how we can mobilize for mass immunization for our children here in Nigeria, giving the policy gaps and dissentment, or rather dissatisfaction with the process. Now, with us is Dr. Itunu Dave Agbola. She's a policy and advocacy coordinator at Save the Children International. She's a leading voice in promoting child health and survival. And also joining us virtually is Dr. Philip Njemanze. He's the chairman of the International Institute of Advanced Research and Training, Chidikon Medical Center. Has spoken to us about, advocacy, vaccine advocacy and policies as well. Before the break, we're talking to Dr. Jamanze, but I will come to Dr. Dave Agbola and talk about the sentiments of social media and how it's played in, the disregard for immunization for children, childhood immunization, and zero children, as you call them. Has social media played in this, where people are now changing their sentiments and their stance on whether or not the children should be vaccinated? I mean, we saw it grow very widely during the COVID-19 2020 and 2021 during the COVID vaccines
campaign. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. Social media propaganda has been a barrier to effective immunization to a large extent, because this was largely played out during the COVID-19 vaccination programs. Save the Children is also working through the social media to dispel myths and misconceptions about immunization, to get more people convinced to embrace immunization. For example, there's an app we are working on, which is currently working. It's called Act Navy, an app that parents, caregivers, and anyone can actually access to ask questions about immunization and seek information to get the right approach to immunization. This also helps to dispel the myths and misconceptions about immunization.
What are these myths and misconceptions that we might hear about immunization in Nigeria?
You might hear saying that immunization is something foreign coming into your body system. And when it enters your body, it will definitely disorganize the normal functioning of your system. I've heard some people saying if a girl child takes HPV vaccine, that girl may never be able to have a child in future. We have a lot of these myths and misconceptions, especially at the grassroots level.
And are these myths and misconceptions, in quote, totally untrue, or are there some, trueness to these?
They're actually untrue, no element of truth.
I'm going to come to Dr. Njamanze because I think we've had this conversation before once. Dr. Njamanze, regarding these myths and misconceptions, are there any truths in them? Are there any, because it's inviting or putting in foreign bodies, which in most cases are the very diseases you're trying to ward off. What might go wrong, or why might people have these myths or misconceptions about vaccinations if they are supposed to be good for the children?
Yeah, well, there have been some concerns which were aired from very high levels of the scientific strata. But I remember in 2010, there was a retraction of a publication made in Lancet that the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, the MMR, could cause autism. And this was a big publication, and it was proven to be false. And then the work was retracted. So such big item issue that caused a lot of row brings skepticism in people. And then, of course, there were observations of use of infertility, added things to the vaccine for tetanus and all that. And this went to court in Indonesia, in Philippines, and South Africa, in different places. So these issues brought a lot of doubt. But this we can solve very easily. If the vaccination and immunization process is totally nationally owned, that means we produce the vaccines here. So where will the doubt come from? I mean, why would the Nigerian government arm their own people? So if these things, and that should be what every country should do, and that's what most of the countries are doing. So they actually own the process. And even if you want to produce it and you're a foreign company, they will insist that you establish the firm that is the company there in their country. So you will have that vaccine being produced, and it will be subject to scrutiny by the local authorities. So with this type of stringent move that will localize the vaccine production and its distribution, it will make things clear all these doubts in the minds of people. And this is what is required. The government has to exercise ownership of the entire health sector. You cannot contract health outside authorities on any ground. And that's why Nigerian doctors are leaving. That's why the statistics you're producing with midwives and staff now is happening, because you don't own the health industry. Like now in Igbo State, 75% to 80% of the care is actually in the private hands. If you want to have a viable health system, you really have to incorporate them into a system. If there is nothing wrong with privately run healthcare system, after all, the United States, basically the United States government has less than 3-4% of the hospitals in the United States. So it can be done, but it has to be integrated into a functional system, a system that is totally indigenous. That means you don't go accepting vaccine from one foundation or the other or some international agencies. These are not the work of those international agencies. Those international agencies were set up for collaborative work. They are not the people to generate these vaccines and send them to you, and whenever they give you, you will have vaccine. When they don't give you, you will not have any.
Okay.
This is subjecting, that is just like contracting the building of military barracks and police stations to some other country to be doing. This is health. Health is national security. We have to exercise ownership of health in our country.
Right, so from what Dr. Jamaze said, it makes, because I remember back in the 80s and in the 90s, there was a concerted effort by the government to continually sensitize the masses, whether it was from media or via media or newspaper, radio, television ads. There are ads that I still do remember back in the day, whether it was kick polio out, whether it was HIV, AIDS, all of this vaccination drive, this media drive that forced parents to come out and give vaccination to their children. So what has changed between that time and now? Let me come to you, Dr. Itunu Dave-Agbola. You are in the advocacy sector. What's changed since that time and now in the messaging and sensitization?
Thank you very much. There has been a lot of improvement in messaging and sensitization, especially leveraging the social media system. The Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even WhatsApp has helped to disseminate correct information to people about immunization. And beyond social media, there are also activities at the grassroots level that directly engage our traditional and religious institutions. We respect our traditional institutions a lot in this part of the world, and we are very religious as well. So when the traditional and religious institutions embrace immunization, we discover that it flows down to the communities at the grassroots level. So we have been engaging these community structures to gain their commitments to vaccination, and they have been helpful in disseminating the correct information to their people at grassroots level.
So I hear you when you talk about the use of social media and the fact that this is a good way to disseminate all of this information. That's all well and good. However, when we talk about data and technology of the other sorts, data first off, how much of these people are not serviced? How many of these nomadic tribes or hard to reach people?
How many of them have a mobile phone that can find this
there
messaging?
You go. They might not get these messages.
Exactly.
Now, you spoke about a situation where most Nigerian doctors and nurses, manpower personnel, is outside of the country. Are we leveraging on technology to try and bring these people into the group of people that are immunized or children that are immunized? And how are we leveraging on technology there? Not social media now.
Thank you. We're leveraging technology by improving data collection for evidence-based decisions to track children that have never been immunized, zero-dose children, so to speak, and under-immunized children. When children are tracked, then they can be reached through outreach activities. Just as you said, there are some nomadic tribes and there are some who do not even have access to social media or technology. For such people, we encourage outreach activities to reach them in their own setting, leveraging their community structures.
Who are we encouraging at this point exactly? And is it getting to them? Is the message getting to them that these people need to be serviced when it comes to immunization? Are they responding? The authorities, what authorities and how much response have you gotten from them?
Yes, the authorities are responding, especially Lagos State. They are doing a lot on immunization.
But Lagos State is not hard to reach. And
Lagos
everybody's
State
got a
is
phone.
not hard to reach, but we have hard to reach areas in Lagos. We have urban slums. We have ghettos in Lagos.
I agree.
Yes, we do.
What about other parts of the country? The north, for instance, the Niger Delta. I've been in villages that are very excited to see a motor car.
Well, your motor car is kind of exciting.
I wasn't going to go there. I wasn't going to go there.
Yeah, you were going to point it out.
Very excited to see a motorcycle.
Yes.
They haven't seen these things. So I'm wondering how these people, when it comes to immunization, whether they're actually reached.
And that is why we're talking about outreach activities. A situation where health workers go into those communities to deliver immunization services to those people right within their environment. But then comes in the issue of human resources for health, the manpower. We need adequate manpower and enough health workers to effectively conduct outreach activities.
Let's talk about the projection of, looking at the gaps that we're seeing from the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, to the point where we totally kicked out polio out of Nigeria, now seeing that the numbers are now slowly dwindling, and we're seeing this gap coming back again at a time where technology and artificial intelligence is now, commonplace. What do we risk in the near future?
Thank you very much. We risk a lot in the near future if we don't brace up, because prevention will always be better than cure. We all heard about the millions of lives that were lost during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that takes me to the theme of this year's World Immunization, that immunization for all is humanly possible. If we can collaborate and put concerted efforts into this, we can actually eradicate all these vaccine-preventable diseases. I will use the example of smallpox. Smallpox was a deadly disease that ravaged and killed thousands or millions of people. Over a period of 3,000 years, smallpox was raging, but it was eradicated in 1979 through immunization efforts. So it is possible.
Absolutely possible.
Yes.
Dr. Njamanze, I'd like to come to you now. Regarding the loss of manpower when it comes to the Nigerian system, you did say something about what the authorities should do. Own the health system, stop subcontracting it out. But then we don't have that manpower, as Dr. Itunu has noted. What's your suggestion for owning the system and also the manpower for, targeting a situation where we have more manpower? Do people or do agents absolutely have to come from the medical sector? Can people be trained from other sectors to help this army for immunization in Nigeria? Your suggestion, sir.
Yes, but first and foremost, I would like to underscore that there should not be overemphasis on vaccination as the magic bullet for disease prevention that will solve Nigerian child mortality problem. Because the thing that kills majority of the children is actually not those that we can vaccinate. The diarrheal diseases, for example, just getting potable water could solve 50% of child mortality. Could you see? It could transform things. So I don't want to subscribe to the fact that if we improve vaccination and get it to 100%, and then we will solve the problems of child mortality and all the other things. No, it is only part, it's just a tool among the toolbox we have and can help to some extent. But it should not overshadow the more important, the elephant in the room, which is the area as far as child mortality is concerned. On the way of improving the health workforce and then incentivizing the health workforce, if you have an industry whereby there is no access to loan, there is no access to a pilot's capital, there is no access to credit, there is no access to any meaningful government intervention to make healthcare workers stay in the country, how will you have them? It is even a miracle that anybody agrees to work in the Federal Republic of Nigeria in the health sector without enormous sacrifice that is being done. So I think the thing is total neglect, irresponsibility of government on every state should be able to dedicate at least 10 billion naira to incentivizing the health workers, give them loans, provide health bank amenities for people who want to set up new practices, whether they are nurse practitioners or doctors or any other people trying to set up facilities for diagnostics in health. This should be available. And why would anybody who has maybe 20 million, 30 million, or 50 million investment in a facility that is working in Nigeria want to go to England to maybe probably work at the lowest level before they can ascend to somewhere meaningful? So I think the problem is not the exodus of the health book. It is the lack of responsibility of the government to demand tax. What you need to do, how are you going to address the industry? Could you imagine today that you don't have these incentives, even the small incentives we offer to farmers? We will not have food. So if you don't give the incentive to help growers, you will not have health. That's exactly what you are, passioning for. So I think there has to be a rethinking. The health bank is important. The startup capital is important. They have to help people who want to set up practices, access to land, access to different amenities. In fact, all these vaccinations could be done by the private sector by giving them these vaccines to do in the local communities where they find themselves, and giving them, when you give somebody, okay, we are going to give you 20 million low interest or no interest loan to go to your community and set up a clinic, and you will also be doing vaccination among other things you are doing. What do you think will be the response? Maybe you are likely to get a yes.
Dr. Njamazi, I want to say thank you very much, and I'm wondering whether somewhere in the future there for you is Minister of Health.
You're wondering?
Just after, yeah.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tinubu was in here giving you the thumbs up all the while you were speaking. She was like, yeah. Thank you very much, our good doctors, for being on this session here today. We do appreciate your input, and we're looking forward to seeing that the system is owned by the authorities, the Nigerian authorities, instead of outsourcing it, and that we can reach every single child, well, hopefully, and also maybe give them some portable water, as you said. Dr. Njamazi, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And you're welcome back. It promised fast returns. It promised of a robust digital trading platform, and it attracted thousands of Nigerians desperate to multiply their savings. Now, CBEX, a cryptocurrency and digital asset exchange platform, has crashed, leaving countless investors in shock and despair. What some believed was a legitimate investment opportunity is now being labeled yet another Ponzi-style collapse, raising fresh concerns about digital asset regulation in Nigeria. But beyond the headlines and financial jargon lies a deeper story. Why are so many Nigerians repeatedly falling for schemes like this? Is it a matter of ignorance, desperation, or perhaps something much more psychological?
On a big story this morning, we unpack the human, regulatory, and systemic dimensions of the CBEX crash and the wider digital asset environment. Joining us, Dr. Bonjubela Abiri, consultant psychiatrist and also associate lecturer at LASTUTH, here to help us understand the psychology behind high-risk investments and the emotional toll of such financial losses. And also, Iwa Salami, Director Center of FinTech at the University of East London, bringing insight into what effective regulation of digital financial platforms should look like, especially in emerging markets like Nigeria. You're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Welcome, ladies. Ladies, it feels like deja vu all over again. MMM, MBA Forex. I didn't even know what MBA Forex was. And now CBEX. Imagine my surprise waking up and I saw CBEX and I thought, wait, BES? It's confusing. But I mean, doctor, from your work in psychiatry and psychological, evaluation, what exactly is this pull or attraction that we constantly see with Nigerians and get quick, die fast? I'm sorry, I just couldn't help it. I couldn't help it.
Slow down, girl.
I'm sorry. Dr. Abiri, you have the floor.
Well, so now it's happened to us, and so it's almost easy to say that it's Nigerians. But to be honest, it's happened world over. And so you'd probably remember the Benny Madoff story, which had this huge, Ponzi-like story over the couple of years. I mean, even as a psychiatrist, sometimes you see it and wonder. and you think about the fact that it hurt you before, why are you going back there again?
Exactly.
However, we must
situationships.
However, we must understand the behavior, economics of behavior. The fact that people will continue to do certain things in spite of the fact that it has hurt them in a certain way before. And that clearly is backed by psychological theories. So one of those psychological theories is the theory of prospect by Kahneman, that says that people are very likely to be driven by the fact that there is a promise at the end of something. They will not look at what they would lose. They will not look at what the risk involved is. There's no certainty. Of course, the money is huge. It sounds, too good to be true, but people will jump at it anyways. Aside that is the fact that there's a social theory that talks about the herd mentality, the group mentality. Mazino is doing it, so why can't I do it?
Might as well try.
Yeah, why can't I try as well? And then there are other theories that talk about, cognitive biases, a systematic error that, happens when people are taking decisions about life, even when judgment is poor, even when it seems illogical. And so you have something that is called an authenticity bias. A big celebrity just endorsed it. It's too good to be true. Why don't I just jump on it? Sometimes, sometimes it's the fact that, you can't believe that you would miss the signs. Oh, I'm financially savvy. I know what to look out for. I know, when it's going to crash. And so people will continue to do it. However, it's funny. However, I think it's also very, very important that we understand that the psychological underpinnings of things like attachment theory. So for instance, if you had a child who had inconsistent caregiving, you're with this person today, someone else takes you tomorrow, someone else takes you tomorrow. Then, even as an adult and in making financial decisions, what people find is that people are more likely to be attracted to uncertainty rather than certainty. Then, of course...
So, greed doesn't play into this?
Oh, definitely, there is greed. Greed because there is a hope for huge financial gains. However, we must also talk about the fact that it is hope that is covered up as aspiration or desperation.
I was going to say it's funny because people who went into these schemes, who go into these schemes, actually know it will crash.
Yes, finally.
They've seen it before. They're like, if I get in, get out.
Get in, get out.
I flew the fast one on them. Hey, joke's on you. But still, crash. About the people crying. Why didn't they go? Anyway, another thing. Ms. Iwad Salami, let me come to you now. Being a fintech expert on all, I'm wondering exactly what people missed out. Weren't there signs that people could have seen, whether the investors or maybe even the government, for instance? CBEX was out there. It was garnering popularity. People were investing. What did the government miss out? What did the people miss out?
So, I mean, the one thing I'd say really is that, people would always want, a quick turnaround for investments, individuals. And I think a lot of these really is driven by greed. And we would usually say, as most financial regulators in the world, particularly around crypto regulation, would usually have an initial stance that people should be very wary of investing in any crypto type platform, and if those platforms are actually known and registered, that they should only really be investing what they can afford to lose, because of course we know across the history of crypto assets and cryptocurrencies, these are quite high risk assets, and therefore trading platforms that hold themselves out as being crypto asset trading platforms or crypto asset exchanges, really there's an expectation for starters, but firstly, that actually you're registered by the Securities and Exchange Commission, and that, whoever is transacting on those platforms really are kind of aware, should be aware that they're actually registered, trading platforms. The one thing we usually say to our students of fintech regulation and the regulation of financial markets here really is that despite the fact that the rationale for securities regulation is primarily investor protection, retail investor protection, and the preservation of market integrity, and to a lesser extent financial stability, we also know that regulation isn't 100% at preventing, investor fraud, investor, losses, or indeed financial crises, as we've seen in all the history of financial crises across the world. I mean, we've had fantastic regulation, but we still have these financial incidents and crises happening. And it's the same with investor protection. So basically, one of the things we also are aware of is, despite the fact that we say this to our students, we also tell them that actually there are disadvantages of regulation. And one of the disadvantages of regulation really is a concept called moral hazard. And that concept, it has two hats. Now, the one hat that's particularly relevant to us here is the hat that because individuals know there's regulation, they don't do their own personal checks on platforms that they're investing in or schemes that they're investing in. And there's always that responsibility on the retail investor, to actually check to find out, is this a legitimate business? Is this a viable business? You know, is this something worth doing? And so the background check, there's that onus really on the investor, the retail investor here to do that. So, you know, I get the fact that there's an expectation that the regulators have their own requirements, you know, an expectation to actually regulate. But there's also that huge responsibility, I'd say, on retail investors. I mean, if you're going to be trying to invest more than you can afford to lose, then the onus is on yourself to actually be sure that you've at least done your own research to a certain extent.
Professor, just for clarity now, cryptocurrency trading is not 100% bad, is it? And then if you could also attend to Ponzi schemes as well. Is it 100% no-go, are you saying?
Okay. So crypto assets, you know, right across the history of crypto assets, initially was, you know, there was this big issue as to people not even touching crypto assets, and we had different approaches to regulation across the world, from some regulators not wanting to deal with it initially, to some actually outrightly banning it. But we're at a situation now internationally where regulation is out now. Most advanced economies are regulating crypto assets. So we're regulating the licensing of platforms coming on board. We're regulating different dimensions of how they're trading. Yes, indeed, there are aspects that need to be strengthened across the world and therefore, and across the various regulatory provisions in different countries. But as we speak, we have platforms across the world that are complying with regulation and that are legitimate business and that are giving people the opportunities to actually transact, trade in crypto assets. Obviously, a very hugely volatile asset class. So, you know, that comes with I'd say that comes with the territory of the type of asset we're talking about. But in terms of the actual trading platforms, we have regulation in place now to ensure that before you actually, and this is across the world, that before you actually institute yourself as a trading platform, you're licensed to transact. Okay. And if you're transacting without license, then you're falling foul of regulation, and you should be expecting the repercussions, the enforcement provisions that would be leveled against you for doing that. So it's not an illegal business, crypto asset trading, definitely not. And crypto asset transactions, no. If you're transacting on platforms that are registered and adequately licensed, it is legitimate business.
Now, Professor, I don't know if you just saw, if you're looking at the video we're playing now, that's a certificate from the CBEX office, so showing that they're actually licensed here in Nigeria. Yet, they crashed. Now, I do hear what you say about personal responsibility when it comes to the investors, but what could they look out for? What else could they look out for?
Can I twist that question?
Yeah, go ahead, Judith, please.
Professor, Salami, you are a director for the Center of FinTech at the University of East London, which literally means that you also critique the regulatories of different countries when it comes to, you know, financial bodies such as this. If you look at our regulatory bodies and the laws and the guidelines that guide these companies, what are the gray areas?
Flaws.
What are the flaws? If you were to critique it, what are the gray areas and flaws? And how can we make it watertight for the populace?
Thank you very much. So there are two questions that you've asked. So the first question is that, yes, CBEX and its promoters and affiliates were licensed by the Corporate Affairs Commission to be companies, okay, that can actually engage as basically registered companies. Now, to engage in a financial business, I think you need the relevant license. If you're a bank, for example, you need a license from the CBN. If you're a platform that deals with digital assets or any type of financial instruments or assets, you need a license from the Securities and Exchange Commission. Now, CBEX was not licensed by the Securities and Exchange Commission. I just need to clarify that. It might very well be that the certificate that they had there was a certificate basically of one of their affiliates, or of them sort of saying that actually we have a certificate from the Corporate Affairs Commission as a registered company. But in terms of being licensed to engage in security, in the securities business, capital markets type transactions, they would have needed a license from the Securities and Exchange Commission. And we know that they didn't get that because the Securities and Exchange Commission have clarified and have mentioned to us that they were not licensed. In fact, if you go to the platforms, which I did actually, to check whether or not they were licensed, or the verification of really the licensing status on the Securities and Exchange Commission, they don't come up, so they're not there. So they were not licensed.
License or not, is our regulations airtight or watertight?
So I think the confusion here is that you can have companies that have been through the Corporate Affairs Commission and are licensed companies, okay? But the situation is, if you're going to transact, as it was in this case, if you're going to transact in any financial markets or any financial business, you need the requisite license. And that's predominantly because banks and other financial institutions are quite heavily regulated businesses because of the impact that they do have on the economy. And therefore, they're kind of like a different class of companies, if you like. So not just only would they have a corporate affairs, as in the case of Nigeria now, Corporate Affairs Commission's license, but they do need, in order to engage in financial markets business or as a bank, they would need a license from the specific regulator that's in charge of regulating that space. And that could be, if it's a bank, the central bank, and if it's a financial market or investment business, that would be the Securities and Exchange Commission. So I think the issue really here is that you have two kind of licensing processes, but for financial firms, they actually do need to be need a license from the specific regulator that regulates and supervises that industry.
All right, thank you very much, Professor. I'm wondering who has all that time to actually go and start getting these details before investing. But that's what we should do, due diligence. Dr. Bojuwala, let me come to you now. Let me put it in a small story. So my salary no longer takes care of my luxuries, notes to management. Times are hard. The economy is, what costs 100 naira before costs 300 naira now? Eggs, for instance. How much do you buy eggs now?
What, 6, 7, 6, 8, 8
for just, wow. I don't know, because my wife does the shopping, but it's that bad. Now, if you present me such a larger-than-life type situation, like, okay, if you put in 100,000, you're going to get 200,000 by the end of 30, 41 days or so, I'm likely to say, okay, let me give it a try. Let's speak to the psychology of this as human beings when we have needs, yet we can still invest. Gamble, the word is actually gamble whatever assets we have, just with the possibility of getting more. How does that work in our heads?
I mean, so to be honest, unfortunately, if that kind of scheme was brought to us, chances are, if one of us doesn't jump at it immediately, then the rest of us will go home and start to think about it. Because you're thinking, I can cash out before, you know, it all hits the ground and everything, you know, bursts, and it's so bad.
Excuse me.
Yes.
If I was able to go off the scale, trafficked wife, I could do anything. You know what I mean? I can, like in front of you, like the passport, America, streets. And I was like, what do you take me for?
So again,
I can go through anything.
Yeah, it's best that you look at individuals, not, you know, not the general idea that, you know, these things have happened before. We've heard the story. Chances are, even after the CBEX crash, a number of people are still going to jump on another one. Largely because of things like fear of missing out. Like I said earlier on, everybody's doing it. Somebody has told me.
Are there economic influences at play here?
Oh, definitely.
Is it because of the situation of Nigeria that such investors, and I mean in the case of CBEX and the rest, will take advantage of the situation?
Well, to a large extent, but not necessarily all the time. You know, when I was reading up the story yesterday, I also found out that, you know, Immunisation also put in 10 million.
Yes, he
so
sang that.
he wasn't
with the world's tiniest violin.
So unfortunately, he wasn't struggling as compared with quite a number of people who did it out of, you know, desperation, poverty, ignorance.
I get you.
And because they didn't actually know. The honest truth is, regardless of what the scheme is, people from different parts of the socioeconomic spectrum will fall for it. They'll fall for it because everyone wants a quick buck. Everyone wants something from, you know, the big pile. Everyone will say that I would get my share before, you know, luck runs out. I think that because these people also use very compelling people who are sweet talkers, smooth talkers, who will tell you, who will be able to tell you, you know, things. And of course, the people that they speak to as well are extremely vulnerable. They have a high level of trust. They're high risk takers, and they're most times not financially savvy. What they want is, this will become this, let's do it. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work out.
I remember last year, and it's very clear around this time, I was saying it that when you see an economic downturn that we're seeing with the numbers in our inflation, what happens is a rise of the Ponzi schemes, but also religious bodies as well. There's also the churches and the sects or the cults that would, you know, draw them in, and people are seeking miracles instead of going to church. We see all of that. There's sales of holy water and, you know, like oils. And so I'd like for you to talk about the cultural norms of this as well that we're seeing, whether or not people are trying to get rich quick, whether or not the economic issues, but there's also more at play at the cultural undertones, and I'd like for you to address
Well, so our conversations are almost always incomplete if we don't talk about social, cultural, and religious, you know, underpinnings as well. It's interesting that in psychology, you also talk about what is known as the affinity, you know, affinity phenomenon, where quite a number of these schemes look to organized society. So they look to churches, they look to, you know, a professional who is good at what they do, they look to, you know, very organized structures. And of course, you know, when there is an economic downturn, sometimes people expect that suicide rates may go high. Sometimes people actually stay on. People are actually looking for the next big break. People are actually looking for what looks like hope. And so while the CBEX crash may look like greed to a lot of people, it's also hope covered up in desperation and aspiration. And so, you know, whoever is listening, and quite a number of people would dismiss this, would invalidate it, and say that these people were just stupid. It's not stupidity. It's psychological patterning. Because some people have done this before, they'll do it again. Some people are of the opinion that, nothing good will ever come to me, largely because they may have heard someone say to them when they were young, you're not good with money. Somebody may have gone through a traumatic life event that looks like this, that may be relationship inclined. But again, after a while, it then goes on from just relationships to even finance as well. So again, like she said earlier on, Professor said that people need to be informed. But people must also want that information to be able to do something better with the information. A lot of people will continue to thrive in ignorance. And unfortunately, a key factor that will drive the schemes is silence. The fact that people are ashamed, that how can I tell other people that someone like me, someone as smart, as intelligent as me fell for a scheme like this. But you know, we also need these people to come out to tell their stories. Because
like the musician,
it can happen to anyone.
Like the musician has done actually. I thought that was.
I mean, what I just took out is just bringing like desperation clocks in hope. Just cool.
Dr. Professor Iwasalami, I've got one for you. Now, if I was to make a transaction at the banks and it was say more than 5 million naira, I know that there is a ding or a bell that rings at the EFCC office. Now, in these kinds of cases where you have CBEX, MMMs, and the rest, isn't there some kind of mechanism that could be put in place where when people invest in these schemes, that it rings that same bell at these authorities, the EFCC, for instance, as we're speaking of? Is that anything that could be put in place or that already exists?
And that's a very good question. That already exists, actually. So if CBEX actually was, if they were a legitimate business, we have the Financial Actions Task Force, which is the global standard setter, if you like, the watchdog for financial crime. across the world. So they're the international body. The EFCC, Nigerian regulators across the across the board, with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the CBN, are quite aware of what we call them FATF, the Financial Action Task Force. And the primary reason is that countries that fall foul of the recommendations of FATF would usually be put on a grey list or on a type of list that isn't good for foreign investment in a country. So the regulators are quite aware of this. And so FATF have a regulatory provision that for crypto asset transactions that exceed a certain amount, so that exceed $1,000 and 1,000 euros, there needs to be something called the travel rule compliance, the travel rule, I'd say, which basically requires that both the sender and the recipient exchanges know exactly who are transacting in those amounts. So basically, there should be an exchange of the beneficiary and the recipient, so we can track who is actually sending that amount of money. And that's not a huge amount of money. I mean, that's 1,000 euros and dollars. And so therefore, if we have that in place, I mean, if CBEX, for example, was licensed, there would have been a requirement, a regulatory requirement that they would have been violated if transactions exceeding that amount were actually happening on their platforms. So we do have that in place. Okay. And I just wanted to piggyback on the point that Dr. Benjamin actually mentioned. So there's the FOMO, which is the fear of missing out, that is very endemic, I'd say, in the crypto asset space. We have that across the board, whether in decentralized finance, which is another dimension of crypto assets. People just generally feel like if there's going to be an opportunity here to invest and get money, they want to be a part of it. And so this is where that whole, I'm not a psychologist, but we see this happen across the world. It's not just a Nigerian situation. And that's why in the instances of CBEX as a trading platform, I mean, it's very unfortunate that CBEX really was not licensed to function. We've had instances, again, tracking across the history of crypto assets, where initially we had these platforms existing without licenses because, of course, regulators at the time didn't really quite know what to do with them. But then we had a situation where they were licensed. There was, regulation came on board to have those trading platforms licensed. And in fact, some of them had to go through a period where they didn't have any licenses and were given deadlines to actually get licensed, KYC on all know your customer exchange requirements, for them to have done that on all the parties that are transacting on them, people that have accounts on them. So if we look at the history of crypto asset collapses right from the very beginning, looking at an exchange called Mt. Gox, right down to FTX that we're all aware of, that happened in 2022. A trading platform that was quite close to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the US Securities and Exchange Commission. So across the board, both as unregulated crypto asset firms, right down to even the regulated crypto asset firms, we still have situations where, exchanges collapse. And that's why, as we progress in regulating the space, there's a need not just only to actually regulate in terms of having licensed trading platforms, but to actually know what's going on in those platforms. I mean, how are they using people's assets to transact? There's another concept called proprietary trading. To what extent are they using the monies that people have put on those exchanges to transact?
Professor, we do have to round off here because we're getting close to the end of the show, but I just wanted to ask Dr. Bonjibola here to please, for those people who might feel like they're losing out when these kinds of opportunities come through, what do you have to say to them that would calm their fears and perhaps save them from a psychological point of view, please?
So,
real quick, because we're out of time.
Well, to be honest, you can't save everyone. And so you can only hope that the information that you put out there at a point in time will be able to help these individuals. I think it's particularly important for us as individuals to know ourselves. What kind of person am I? Am I anxious? Am I, highly trusting of other people? Do I have a, huge risk appetite? Would I do things even when everyone says don't do it? So know yourself and know when to call it quits. Also be very financially aware. Be informed. So for instance, I didn't know anything about CBEX until it crashed. And then I started seeing it online. Be aware. Yeah, be aware, even though you're not putting your money there. And also learn from experience.
Yeah.
The greatest teacher, of course, is experience. Many years ago.
It doesn't have to be your
experience. Yeah, it doesn't it doesn't have to be your experience, but you'd be surprised that some people still want to make their own mistakes and learn from them. Again, we may call it stupidity, but it's called psychological patterning. So people need to be aware. And if you've fallen for this one, and there are people like this, my heart goes out to you. Beyond education, awareness, and advocacy, we need to show these people empathy. Because if they knew better, they would do better. And so with this information that we shared this morning, I'm hopeful that people now know better, and going forward, they will do better.
There are some people that know better, but choose not to do better. And to them, I say, carry on.
Well done. Professor Iwasalami, I want to say thank you very much. Dr. Bonjibo Labiri, thank you very much for giving us such a stellar inclusion on our lineup today. We do appreciate it. And we'll do better ourselves. We'll try and put everything you said
I've done my own
into practice.
If it gets quick, get rich, die quick. You never know.
Thank you, ladies. And to our guests, I want to say thank you very much for joining us from 8 a.m. this morning. We are going to be back here again, you and I, for
yes,
a
indeed.
Sunday edition. Join us for Breakfast Extra then. Until then, we say goodbye.
Oh, yeah, goodbye. We'll see you 8 a.m. tomorrow, sharp, bright and early. Don't go to church. Come over here. I said, go to church.
Says the agnostic. All right.
Yeah,
bye-bye, everybody. See you guys tomorrow. Imagine two agnostics actually hosting a show.